In 2021, I made a video where I opined, what if John Carpenter made The Thing more contemporary to the Cold War of 1982, specifically replacing the Norwegians with people of another nationality? Would a mostly American audience feel differently, although 99% of the story would be exactly the same, almost word by word? Wouldn't there have been a lesson if Copper set aside the political differences and insisted on helping the adversaries of the time? Unfortunately, months after I published the video, certain world events made the theoretical question, no matter how fictional, inappropriate for YouTube. Regrettably, I made it worse for myself, given our AI overlords, by not using the historically correct nationality, choosing a more colloquial adjective to make it more accessible to a modern audience. But I can't do that. So I've redone the script in order not to confuse a 41-year-old film for a modern-day political commentary. Geez, you think I was arguing about wearing masks during a pandemic? Gene Siskel gave a rather tepid and lukewarm endorsement of John Carpenter's The Thing. He saw a Cold War analogy in the xenophobia of us versus them. If only you can get past the distracting practical effects.
I think that it's about how a society, this little group here, wants to poison, they think something's going wrong, you're not in the group, you're out.
But I didn't see any of the references. To me, examples of Cold War movies in the 80s were Red Dawn and anything Sylvester Stallone or Chuck Norris at the time. But it had me thinking, what if John Carpenter and screenwriter Bill Lancaster wanted a Cold War vibe? He simply could have replaced the Norwegians with Soviets. The script would have changed little, the story none. But would the audience think and remember the movie differently? Instead of a film regarded for its paranoia and its amazing practical effects, would it have been labeled as a remake of the Invasion of the Body Snatchers under a different name? Today we take a look and imagine what if the Norwegians were replaced by a more 80s contemporary opponent in John Carpenter's The Thing. Before we do, please consider leaving a like, share, or subscribe if you enjoyed this content and want to see more like this one. An unfamiliar helicopter flies over outpost number 4. The inhabitants gather outside. They wonder with curiosity, instead of a friendly Scandinavian nation that doesn't stoke feelings of Cold War animosity. Childs tells the others it's Soviet. Now the story kicks off with little but stoked feelings. The copter lands, chasing a friendly acting dog. The Soviet staff, speaking a different dialect, act haphazardly, throwing thermite charges irresponsibly. The last survivor from the foreign nation carries an AK, speaks loudly, and opens fire. Gary, the American commander, doesn't hesitate and pacifies the situation. It's no longer a simple act of self-preservation, but contributing to a hot war where gunfire is exchanged. This makes Blair plead to Windows to find someone, anyone on the radio. The mess isn't just bizarre, but a serious international incident. It also fuels a fan theory why Windows can't reach anyone on the entire continent. There is no one else. Anywhere. On his roller skates, Knowles glides in and suggests, maybe we're at war with the commies, he says. It's no longer a joke, but a possibility at the back of everyone's minds. The attempt at sarcasm falls flat. Copper wants to go up to the Soviet camp. His display of humanitarianism is kicked up a few notches. Bennings continues talking about the weather, where Gary should have been contemplating the risks sending Americans to a Soviet station. MacLeod questions the judgment flying during windy conditions. Instead of asking Copper, "You really want to save those crazies?" Copper would have replied, "They're people too," hinting reconciliation, unified by a bigger, more universal problem. The arrival at the foreign station would have been mysterious, but for different reasons. It's more than what was behind the insanity, but encroaching on enemy territory as outsiders, as invaders. In political parallels, the Americans are people from another country, arriving from the skies, uninvited. Walking inside, Mac would have said something off-putting and undiplomatic, and corrected by Copper. The signs of violence reminds a Cold War audience that money, military power, or differences of economic philosophies aren't enough to make us safe. The station would have shown us that another power, a superpower, made camp in Antarctica with similar technology and objectives as Americans. Meanwhile, MacReady finds evidence that their scientists may have beaten the United States at an important discovery. Mac and Copper bring back a strange, malformed humanoid to the outpost. The Red Scare's symbolism and analogy couldn't be more frightening. Blair will explain how on the inside it looks just like us, complete with internal organs and seems to be normal. But it's regarded as foreign, intimidating, something we don't want to have contact with. It's not trusted to turn our backs to, else its kind will absorb us and make us different somehow. The malformed humanoid is another example of pod people, a disturbing reinterpretation of Invasion of the Body Snatchers, but this is an adaptation of John Campbell's story, Who Goes There? And the idea of people taking the identity of others with different thoughts and belief systems inside is merely a coincidence. Watching the recording of and visiting the excavation site may give chills and nationalistic envy. Giving others credit for discovering a flying saucer and having first crack at alien technology would have been an unforgettable retcon of the original film and source material. But as fate had it, they blew it up. This leads us to the final change and its consequences if they had replaced the Norwegians. How would they have told the story in the 2011 What If prequel? More importantly, how would they had shoehorned an American to be the most important person in the room, surrounded by Slavic-speaking people? Let me know in the comments below. Do you feel The Thing was a Cold War film? This is Mr. G of Synergy saying, keep watching the skies for strange government helicopters. Check out other videos on the channel. Thanks for watching.
And I think if you read the movie in that way, then the implausibilities at your level mean very little. And so you sit there wishing, and I do wish, that it were a lot cleaner.